On the wall behind me is a New Zealand memorial that has the names of 450 men. And out here in the cemetery, another 150.
When you come to this part of Europe, this is where you realise the blood of 12,500 New Zealanders was shed. And with every other ally of World War I having built their museum, this to me is so necessary that we have our own.
The majestic L'Arc de Triomphe in Paris. The eternal flame signals the last resting place of an unknown French soldier from World War I. And up the top, you'll find a museum that honours the men from many countries who have fought on French soil, including New Zealand. On his way to the Western Front, Sir Don McKinnon is here too, meeting the New Zealand ambassador. They're discussing the 1918 liberation of Le Quesnoy by the New Zealand Rifle Brigade.
One of the things which is very much bringing us together.
The town marks Anzac Day every year, in memory of the New Zealanders who died securing their freedom. Fittingly, this northern French town is to be the future home of New Zealand's War Memorial Museum on the Western Front. Remarkably, we are the only Commonwealth country who fought here not to have our own museum.
If you look at our contribution out of all proportion to our size and position in the world, in 2 world wars we've put 85,000 men through the European theatre of war, and as a result of that, half of our war dead lie buried in the foreign fields of Europe. It's time, I think, we completed an obligation to remember and honour those generations.
There's 959 Commonwealth war grave cemeteries on the Western Front, and we have Kiwis in 287 of them. Driving north to find out more about the museum, it's not hard to find our stories. Like when the New Zealanders successfully plugged the gap in the spring offensive of March 1917.
It was grim stuff because every man was in the line, every cook had a rifle, there was no one behind us.
Here at Euston Road Cemetery, you'll find graves for 135 men who died in that last week of March. Some of whom had survived the bloodbath of Passchendaele just months previous in October 1917. On just one day, we'd lose 846 men, more than any other single day of the war. You'll find a lot of those men at Tyncott in Belgium. And in the last 100 days, as they advanced to victory and that last battle in Le Quesnoy, you'll find our Bapaume in Grevier.
This is the place where the blood of New Zealanders was shed like nothing on earth. Here we are in the 21st century, and more young kids are wanting to come and visit these World War I battle sites.
But as New Zealanders, we don't have a place we can call our own. The British have many memorials, the huge ones at Meningate and Thiepval with an accompanying visitors centre. The South Africans have one at Delville Wood. The Canadians have Beaumont Hamel Newfoundland Park, where Canadian students come and spend a summer as a guide, as well as majestic Vimy Ridge. And our Australian neighbours have done a magnificent job bringing their World War I contribution alive to a new generation at Villers-Bretonneux. Brisbane Grammar have a music group visiting the day I do. It's plain to see these young people are moved by what they see and now understand. What I can't understand, though, is why New Zealand has not had a place to call our own.
Unlike the Australians, we're certainly not patriotic about our military service. So the net result of that is that we're probably late by about 50 years about doing something.
And when you look at what other countries did for their fallen, I think we've just got to catch up, and this is why I'm very keen to see this progress.
This has been home to the mayor of Le Quesnoy in World War I, and latterly the police as the local gendarmerie, complete with 9 maisonettes on the 1 hectare site. Its next incarnation, as the New Zealand War Memorial Museum, requires a thoughtful renovation.
We want to keep old material,
and all the facade. And inside, we want to keep the old tiles, the old stairs. The ceiling is beautiful too. We will have a museum on the ground floor and the first floor.
And there's room behind for an adjoining bespoke extension.
Very modern and very different. And here we have the memorial walk, and the sculpture of Helen Pollock with the feet.
New Zealand sculptor Helen Pollock's Victory Medal of 36 feet, a platoon size, will be relocated here from its current home in Messines, Belgium. We lost over 100 more than a platoon size, liberating Le Quesnoy in 1918. And those 142 men are not forgotten.
We will have the name of the men who died here.
The museum is a very important project for Le Quesnoy, where we can learn about the past and the liberation, but also about the Maori culture and New Zealand culture.
The place that New Zealanders coming to Western Europe, wanting to know something of our history, will be able to feel at home.
And they'll have a home too, in the yet-to-be-renovated self-catering apartments on site.
Currently, we have 2 or 3 bedrooms, but in the project we will have 5 bedrooms for one house.
I can imagine, you know, school parties can arrive here, they can kick a football around on this ground here, but from here they can visit every major monument.
Not to be only a New Zealand place in Le Quesnoy, but also a place for French people. It will promote very strongly our cultural and social links.
And the relatives of men who fought here to liberate the town see it as a way to honour their memories and those of their fellow soldiers.
I think it's very important that there is such a place.
I think a lot of New Zealanders are unaware of just how many people died on the Western Front and what an absolutely horrendous war it was.
The survival rate of second lieutenants was very low. He felt he was fortunate that the war didn't last too much longer.
Let's revere it and let's just remind ourselves what our forebears did.
I do believe that we cannot forget. Even though it's 100 years ago, we cannot forget.
With New Zealand, we have this opportunity to make Le Quesnoy more known.
It is the one place in Europe where they know all about New Zealand.
The people of Le Quesnoy, when they find out that you're from New Zealand, they suddenly embrace you and want to pull you in because they haven't forgotten.
You realise that something which occurred beyond living memory is carried on by a population whose regard and respect for the name New Zealand is huge.
And when we finally have our place for our stories on the Western Front, it'll be the idyllic place to stay.
Base yourself here. Base yourself in a little part of New Zealand in this amazing little French village of Le Quesnoy.
Les 10 humains Narcisse Matora du pain d'épée de Chicago Go, si t'es chargé que t'es fait dodo. Ma petit caca, ma petit poucha, ma gros rogna. Un plat du chagrin, c'est un temps de poids.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.